So, in our digital world, your personal data is basically treasure. But what's really stopping it from getting plundered? Well, today we're going to build the digital fortress that protects all that information, brick by digital brick. Let's get into data security and compliance.
No, seriously, think about it for a second. What stops your private messages from ending up as, like, public news? We all send DMs and share super personal stuff online, and we just kind of trust that it's safe. But what actually keeps it that way? It's definitely not just hope. There are real rules, real systems, and today we are pulling back the curtain on all of it.
You know, it all seems so complicated, right? But honestly, the entire world of data security regulations, it all boils down to preventing one single simple concept: harm. And that could be anything: financial harm, emotional, even physical damage. The whole point of every single rule we're going to talk about is to protect you from that. Okay, so let's get our key terms straight right from the start. First, you have regulations. Think of these as the blueprints for safety. These are the official rules laid down by governments. Then you have compliance. That's the actual construction. It's how companies take those blueprints and build their defenses. 'Cause let's be real, one without the other is just a useless pile of bricks.
All right, Section 1. Why do we even need these rules? Before we dive into the blueprints themselves, we got to talk about why they're so critical. I mean, what happens when the walls of this digital fortress actually come crumbling down? The consequences, well, they're pretty severe.
I'm not kidding. The fallout from a breach hits hard, and it hits everyone. For the company, we're talking millions, sometimes billions in fines, lawsuits, a reputation that's just shattered. But it doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. For the employees involved, it can mean getting fired, facing personal legal battles, and having a huge black mark on your career. So yeah, these rules have real teeth for everyone.
Okay, so let's get into the what of it all. This is where it can feel like a total alphabet soup of acronyms, right? But don't worry, we can make sense of it all by focusing on a few really important landmark regulations that basically shape the entire landscape.
So we're going to focus on 3 of the heavy hitters. You've got Europe's GDPR, that's the one that sent shockwaves across the globe. Then there's California's CCPA, which really set the trend here in the US. And of course, HIPAA, the classic, long-standing guardian of all our health information. Each one of these is a massive pillar in our digital fortress.
And if you look at them side by side, you can see each one has a really clear mission. GDPR is all about empowering consumers in the EU, giving them the right to grab their data or even get it deleted entirely. The CCPA, that gives Californians the power just to say, nope, you can't sell my data. And HIPAA, of course, puts patients squarely in control of how their health information is used. See the pattern? It's all about giving power back to the individual.
All right, so that's the what. Now for the how. How do companies actually go from having these rules on paper to building a real-world functional fortress? Well, they definitely don't just wing it. There's a clear playbook they follow. And this is pretty much that playbook. Step 1, you have to conduct a risk assessment. I mean, you can't defend what you don't even know is a risk, right? Then you establish clear protocols and you put people in charge of them. After that, you've got to be monitoring constantly because the threats are always changing. You also absolutely need an incident response plan. Think of it like a digital fire drill for when things go wrong, because they will. And finally, you have to audit your own defenses. You got to find the cracks before the bad guys do. So following that playbook is huge. But a fortress also needs its walls, right? It needs moats and guards. In the digital world, that's where core security techniques come in. These are the tools companies use every single day to protect our data.
Okay, so the first and most basic layer of defense is the gatekeeper. We're talking about access controls. It's all built on something called the principle of least privilege, which is just a fancy way of saying you only give people the keys to the rooms they absolutely need to be in, nothing more. This is why we have things like multi-factor authentication, or MFA. It's literally the digital version of someone checking your ID at the gate.
And then there's encryption. This is like the ultimate secret code. Think about it. Even if a thief manages to get past the walls and actually steal a file, encryption makes it look like total gibberish. It's completely unreadable. Without that secret key, the data is useless. That's why this is so critical. In fact, GDPR, HIPAA, and CCPA all require it for sensitive data.
So building this fortress, it's not just an internal project. Companies also have to answer to outside watchdogs, and they have to stay on top of all the publicly known threats and vulnerabilities that are out there.
A perfect example of one of these watchdogs is the SEC.
They rolled out these new rules in 2023 that basically force public companies to come clean. If they have a material cybersecurity incident, that means something big enough to make an investor change their mind, they have just 4 business days to report it. 4 days! That kind of intense pressure makes everyone take strengthening their walls a lot more seriously.
So how do the good guys even know where the potential cracks in the walls are? Well, they use amazing resources like the MITRE CVE database. Just think of it like a giant public library that catalogs every single known weakness in software and hardware. It's a shared playbook that lets all the defenders find and patch the holes before attackers can exploit them. But here's the kicker. This might be the most surprising fact you'll hear today. The vulnerabilities that hackers actually use the most, they aren't these crazy new zero-day attacks you hear about in movies. Nope. Most of the time, they're more than 3 years old. Let that sink in. It really just goes to show that sometimes the most powerful defense is also the simplest. Just keep your software updated. So, as we start to wrap this up, what's the big takeaway? It's that building this digital fortress, it's not a project you finish. It's not a one-and-done job. The work is never, ever finished. Instead, it's a continuous cycle. You assess the risks, you adapt your defenses, you monitor for new threats, and you improve based on what you've learned. And then, you start the whole loop over again. Because the threats are always evolving, which means the fortress has to evolve right along with them.
And really, this quote just hits the nail on the head. At the end of the day, upholding compliance isn't just some boring professional obligation or a corporate checkbox to tick. It's a personal responsibility for all of us. Because the harm we talked about at the very beginning, that's real and it affects real people.
So, that leaves us with one final big question to think about. In a world where AI and quantum computing are becoming a reality, what's the next wall for our data fortress going to be? The tools we have now are great, but what comes next? What's the next great defense we'll need to build?